there is one decade of your life that I call the golden decade. And interestingly, whenever I bring it up, the 25-year-old assumes that they're in it because they've got the most time, right? And the 55-year-old assumes that they're in it because they've got the most urgency and that they're closest to sort of retirement, right? They are both wrong. And the people who are actually in it right now, this year, are usually the ones that don't notice because it doesn't sort of announce itself. It doesn't feel golden, right? It feels like life just got a little bit easier for a while and then it's gone, right? So let's clear the ground first, okay? So your 20s, like I said, aren't it? Not the golden decade. Yes, you have the runway and it's absolutely enormous. And every graph that you've ever been shown about starting early is technically true. But the problem is that you've got no fuel, right? You're at the bottom of the earnings ladder and you're probably chipping away at things like student debt and you're just funding the sheer chaos of what it is to try and work out how to be an adult. The maths says start as early as you can, but your bank account says like, okay, but with what exactly? Your 30s aren't it either. I think of your 30s as like the squeeze, right? Your income is climbing genuinely, but it's being vaporized by some of the heaviest costs of your life arriving all at once, right? Wedding, mortgage, and don't let me forget, there's the financial black hole that is childcare, right? That is absolutely brutal in your 30s. You're probably earning more than you've ever earned, and somehow you kind of weirdly feel poorer than you did at 24. Now, that's not a feeling, it's just kind of fact. And your 50s, well, the runway's getting short, okay? So saving hard at 55, and that money's got 10 years to grow before you want it, which helps, but it doesn't really transform anything, and you haven't got that hockey stick exponential growth financial curve, essentially. So your real golden decade, it's your 40s. You are standing on the most fertile financial ground you will ever stand on in your 40s. Here's what's going on, okay? When I map out someone's cash flow on a chart, right, I'm drawing two lines essentially, income and obligations. So obligations is just everything your life demands of you just to keep running, essentially. And for most of your adult life, those two lines kind of move together, right? Progressively together, like they're sort of tied at the wrist. You get a pay rise, something expensive happens, or something obligation happens, increase your obligation happens. It always happens every single time. But somewhere in your early 40s, they start to have this divergence. They start to come apart from each other. I call it the financial eclipse because it's two separate things crossing over at once, okay? Peak pay and lower cost, and it doesn't last forever. Let me tell you, it really doesn't. The first, as I said, is your earning powers hitting its peak. So median earnings top out around 40 to 49, not 55, not 60, right? And then they flatline for the rest of your working life. Don't know why, but that just seems to be what it is. So by the point that you've got, by that point, you've got like 2 decades of hard graft behind you, right? You've maybe stepped into management, you've gone out on your own, and you've finally hit the top of that pay scale around that point. You're no longer kind of cheap labor, and your employer certainly knows it, right? The second one is quieter, right? And it's the one that most people miss or overlook. Your fixed costs start dropping away, not your variable cost necessarily, but your fixed cost, right? So things like nursery fees vanish the day that school takes over. The mortgage interest is shrinking as you build up equity and remortgaging to a better loan to value. That's a huge one for all of this sort of stuff. Loan to value, just for clarification, is the size of your loan, the size of your mortgage compared to the value of your house. And the more of it you own, the cheaper the bank makes your borrowing for you. You're just less risky, right? Meanwhile, the expensive mistake of the expensive mistakes that you made in your 20s are finally starting to sort of be paid off as well. So for the first time in your adult life, what you earn becomes unhooked and unlinked to what you need. And there's a surplus sitting there more often than not. Now, the problem with this is that no one sends you a letter, right, saying, congratulations, you now have 1,100 quid a month spare. Please handle this whole thing carefully. It just doesn't happen like that. And then there's a third thing, which is what makes the 40s mathematically unmatched, okay? To build wealth, money needs two things, all right? Volume and time. In your 20s, you've got time and no volume. And in your 40s, in your 50s, you've got volume and no time. But in your 40s, like we said, and only pretty much in your 40s, you've got both at once. And that is not a small edge. It's the whole entire game, let me tell you. Because money you put in at 40 has roughly 2 decades to work before sort of traditional retirement kicks in. And historically, a broad stock market investment has doubled in value somewhere around every 7 to 10 years after inflation. So £1,000 invested in your 40s has time to double, but then also double again before you might need it. Peak income gives you the volume, the fuel to give you that fire, and the years give you that second double as well. It's a really, really useful combination of the two. So the engine for wealth is absolutely primed. You should be ready to go. So the question then is why does almost everybody waste it? Well, for years, I sort of assumed that it was like irresponsibility, right? Or not really like thinking about what they're doing. That was my read on it, to be honest with you. And I was wrong, is the simplest way to put it. You don't waste your 40s because you're reckless. Like most people don't. You waste them because you feel like you have earned a break. And honestly, you have. Think about what you've just come through. 10 years or more of being squeezed in every direction. Then you surface. There's air, there's room to breathe, right? And that is exactly when that trap door shuts. I call it the entitlement upgrade, because you're not sort of fighting for survival anymore. You start upgrading your life almost absent-mindedly. The reliable estate car goes back and the expensive 40 grand SUV arrives on finance because, hey, you've got the money. The kitchen now apparently needs a £25,000 extension and you can put it on finance. You stop reading the prices on the menu, 4-star instead of 3-star because, well, you work hard, don't you? I sat with a couple a few years back, sort of both in their 40s, good careers, genuinely lovely people. And we were going through their numbers and she's flicking back through these statements and she stopped me and she was like, I just literally have no idea where it all goes, right? We haven't really done anything jazzy or anything big. They didn't have the kitchen extensions or anything else like that. They were like, we haven't really done anything. We don't know where it's gone. Well, they hadn't done anything big. There was no massive holiday to Bali, no crisis, no disaster, right? It had gone in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little 40 quid increments over the last 4 years. It was crazy, just that increased small amount of transactions. And that's what makes it dangerous. It never feels like a decision. So you never really get a chance to kind of decide against it, if you see what I mean. But the part that actually stings, and this is the thing that I'm absolutely sort of bluntest about in my one-to-one work with people, is that the entitlement upgrade isn't just a failure to save, right? It's actually a double penalty when you look into it. When you upgrade your life at, say, 45, it isn't only the money that isn't being invested. You're permanently kind of raising that baseline cost of just being you. If your life now needs £5,000 a month rather than £3,500, you haven't just lost the 1,500 quid that you could have put away. When you think about what you actually need to retire and maintain that standard of living, you've just massively enlarged the pot that you'll eventually need to fund that 5,000 rather than 3,500. You've moved the finish line further away. The precise moment that you've kind of stopped running towards it is crazy. So you have probably already spotted where all of this is going, but the answer isn't just to live like a monk. That's not what I'm getting here at all. You're in your 40s. You're allowed to enjoy what you've built. That's not what we're saying here. But what you do have to do is stop randomly accumulating money and start engineering, fine-tuning where you need to be. And there are three very distinctive moves. The first one is direction, right? So in physics, there is a difference between speed and velocity. Speed is just how fast you're going, right? Velocity is how fast you're going somewhere, okay? Saving in your 20s is just speed, right? You're just chucking whatever's spare into an account and just kind of hope. In your 40s, you need velocity. And that means an actual coordinate, a target to aim at, which means sitting down with two pretty genuinely uncomfortable questions, okay? At what age do you want the option to stop working? And how much a year will you need that figure to be to do that? You can't hit a target that you haven't drawn. And here is the scale of it, right? Current estimates put a comfortable sort of no real worries retirement for a single person, so not a couple, single person, with a pot needed of around £691,000. The median retirement savings for someone between 45 and 54 is £80,000. £80,000. That gap is the reason that this decision matters. The whole job is to work out how precisely, kind of how wide your gap is based on this picture, so that you can run it backwards into a monthly kind of number that you actually need that closes that gap for what you have versus what you need for retirement. That's the first thing. Second, stop paying for things that you don't have to pay for. This is not a lifestyle thing, right? Remember I said the engine's primed, right? Tax is the friction on that engine. Energy bleeding out of the system before it does anything useful for you. And the most common thing that I see high earning 40-somethings do is hand money to the government unnecessarily. Okay, so a big one here. If you're employed, firstly, and if your employer offers salary sacrifice, that's where you agree to take a little bit less pay on paper, but they put that straight into a pension instead. Use it. Use it before you lose it. You're not dodging anything. It's just the system as it's designed to work. Take advantage of it. So just some numbers. If you are a higher rate taxpayer, an extra £1,000 paid to you as your salary might land in your bank account as like £600, £580 once you take tax and national insurance out of it. That same £1,000 sacrificed into a pension, it stays as £1,000. You completely remove the tax friction. And this is important, okay? I want you to go and look for two numbers. What your employer will match up to in terms of a percentage and what you're actually putting in. Those two are different far more often than people would usually expect. And if yours are, you are literally declining free money. It's the only guaranteed 100% return anyone will ever offer you. Just take it, right? Don't turn it down, particularly in this golden decade. Here is something that will scare you, okay? I sat down with a woman a couple of years ago who'd been at the same firm for years. I think it was like 6 years or so. And she was putting in 3%. 3%, because that's what the number printed on the form the day that she joined said. And she'd never really gone back and looked at it since. Her employer would have matched up to 8%. So for 6 years, she'd been handing back 5% of her salary every single month, and she had absolutely no idea. And of course, no one had ever mentioned it to her, because why would they? Right? I actually suspect, we talked about it, I actually suspect her employer was kind of deliberately withholding that information. But anyway, it was crazy. When we worked out what those 6 missed years would have been worth to her retirement, it was well north of 30 grand. She was certainly not careless, right? She was one of the most organized people that I'd ever worked with. She just never looked. And looking took about 5 minutes on the company intranet. It really isn't hard. And third, none of that matters if the money ends up in the wrong place. See, in your 30s, your investment and savings time horizon is so long typically that you can ride out most crashes that happen in the market. In your 40s, the window is narrowing somewhat, so maybe to 10 or 15 years. Still long enough, but the risk that you're taking with your money is really, really important to understand, and it has to match the time that you've actually got before that period of time. Take not enough risk, so leave money sitting in a low interest account or a savings account, and inflation quietly just boils it away, right? Take too much risk in the stock market, and a bad market the week before your 55th birthday can undo a decade worth of work, which is exactly why multi-asset funds exist. So a multi-asset fund is just one fund that blends shares, so investments in the stock market for growth, and bonds for stability, in whatever sort of mix matches the risk that you can genuinely stomach. And the good thing about these sorts of funds is it rebalances itself all the time and does it as it goes, so it keeps in line with that risk the whole time. So another thing, if you've got a concrete retirement date in mind or an exit date in mind, say you want out by 2045, for instance, there is a whole category of investment fund built exactly for that. It's called target dated funds. They're kind of like the self-driving car of the investment world, right? As your year gets closer, the fund gradually moves money out of the racy stuff and into more defensive stuff, without you having to touch or worry about a single thing at all. The golden decade and taking advantage of it doesn't mean trying to be overly sophisticated or overly clever or anything else like that. It's just making sure that the one decade that you actually finally get an alignment of a good financial circumstance doesn't go to waste. Now, one of the big critical decisions that people have to face when they're looking to start aggressively investing their money is whether they should stick in one big lump sum, stick it all into the market and hope, or if they should break it down and invest a little bit over time to reduce market risk. It's an important decision, right? So I really think that you should watch this video here next, because it's the one of genuinely the most important topics in the investing world. And I genuinely think that you will be surprised by the answer that we work through. So give it a click and I will see you there.